J.J. Watt has said goodbye to the NFL after this season in the same way that the Broncos just said goodbye to head coach Nathaniel Hackett after a 4-11 start to his first season. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright, as always, well, most of the time, with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. Guys, we hope you had a very Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whichever you celebrate. We hope you had a great time over your holidays. And I do wish I was able to make it. CJ mentioned it briefly at the start of our last episode. I was on and doing our prep work with both of these guys, and my Wi-Fi just went down, and it was down for like 3 hours. And by the time it was back up, I just needed these guys to step in, and they did so wonderfully. So well that I just had to post you guys on our Instagram a couple of your takes for the naughty and nice list. That was a pretty good segment, I gotta say. But how are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Not too bad.
I'm doing great. I had a great Christmas, with my family, and yep. And we're ready to get the train rolling into the new year.
You already know whose team, clinched the playoff spot this Christmas time.
Done and done. I'm sorry, I got so much throat.
At least I'm in.
Best number 2 team in the AFC North of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2. Who are you talking about? Who's number 1?
We're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are first in the AFC East. Excuse me, AFC
what?
North. And they are, yeah, the world is ass backwards right now. In the AFC North. We do have to get started with this show. Guys, we have a great show in store for you tonight. What's that?
Tell me when the Bengals have a ring, but I digress.
Well, you know what? Better late than never, and I digress.
Never. All right.
They'll get there. This is their year, the Bengals. This is their year. J.J. Watt has announced his retirement for after this season. Broncos have fired head coach Nathaniel Hackett. The Bills and Chiefs have now both clinched their division in the AFC. There's 2 more divisions who are in the AFC still looking to find their division winner. And the first seed is available still for 3 AFC teams. And then we're going to get into the Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix, as always, with our waiver wire pickups for the championship weekend for you guys. Then we have our fan box, where we're going to talk about your picks for the league MVP. So, as always, we start with our first segment, which is that J.J. Watt has announced his retirement. And so we had a little bit of a skirmish here in our Fumblerooski group chat between the 3 of us and Robert Shelley, who's the co-host of another show, but he'll step in every now and then. But so where he stands all time amongst defensive linemen. So I never really looked at his statistics where he stands all time because I just assumed he was just an all-time great. But where he stands in tackles, 580, that ranks outside the top 250. Combined tackles, 445. That also ranks outside the top 250. Sacks, he has a 111.5, which is 38th all time. And players who have more than him are Von Miller, Julius Peppers, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith, Reggie White, Michael Strahan, DeMarcus Ware, Alan Page. Those are just a few notable names. I'm sure you could name plenty of other players, 37 others actually, to be exact. Forced fumbles, he is 27. He has 27, which is tied with 3 other players for 32nd all time. Tackles for loss, 191. That's second all time. That's his best statistic. It is worth noting, however, it didn't become a measured statistic until 1994, which was after a lot of the all-time great names such as Lawrence Taylor, Joe Green were all retired by then, and other players such as Bruce Smith and Reggie White had already played half of their careers by then. So, guys, where do you stand with J.J. Watt all time amongst not just defensive linemen but defensive players all time, like of all time?
CJ,
Justin,
you can go first.
Justin, you can go first.
Oh God, this is gonna be fun.
Oh, this right here. Defensive lineman, top 5 all time. I don't know where to rank them because, to be honest, the defensive positioning and how you define player in certain schemes and schematics is kind of hard, and especially if we go from like a defensive lineman all the way up to a DB, like a safety or a cornerback. So I can't do all time because I don't know how you would rank like safeties and linebackers compared to like defensive ends and defensive tackles and pass rushers. So it's kind of hard for me to like do all time. Where we seem to have the problem here is that you guys don't think he's at least top 5, or at least in the argument for top 5 all time as a defensive lineman. I don't care what the stats tell you. When J.J. Watt was on that field, he was a difference maker. I know it doesn't seem like that because he's 38th all time in sacks, but he has multiple 20-sack seasons. That man was a problem when healthy. And now we're just going to sit here and disrespect the man thinking he's not top 5 all time. I demand for you guys to tell me 5 defensive linemen that are by far better than J.J. Watt. And I refuse to believe that there is 5 better than him all time. You can come up with 2, maybe even 3, but 5 is pushing it. I know he doesn't have the longevity that everybody else does, but I promise you that J.J. Watt was a problem on that field, and his impact more than justifies me saying that he's top 5 defensive lineman all time. I don't need to argue this. This should be just a common slam dunk in my opinion, but I feel like there's going to be an argument here. Take it away.
Well, I assume that's my cue. Now, before we start disagreeing, I don't think it's an argument that J.J. Watt is going to the Hall of Fame. It's something that we know. This is a fact. Love him or hate him, J.J. Watt is a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think he's one of the best defensive linemen all time. The best, though. The best. No. Top 5? I don't know. And there is one thing I would like to say. So Adam mentioned our Fumblerooski group chat where a man by the name of Robert Shelley said that it was debatable, and Justin Tucker backed him up on this.
Yes.
It was debatable, good people who listen, that Bruce Smith is better than J.J. Watt. I think he is, but they said it's debatable. Lies. All
Debatable.
lies.
Debatable.
First of all, let's take a look at J.J. Watt's peak. All right? So basically, 2012, when he had 20 and a half sacks, is really when he burst on the scene. Then in 2015, he had 17 and a half. So for 2012 to 2015, so 12, 13, 14, 15, that was really his prime. Then he's injured. Then he had 16 sacks, and then 4, 5, 1, and then 9.5 this year. So it's like, look at this. His best years was like, he had like his prime, his greatest play was literally 4 years. And then Bruce Smith, where apparently it's debatable that he's better than J.J. Watt. Listen to this. When you just look at sacks, because, that's the most important thing a defensive lineman does. He started in 1985 where he had 6. And then 15, 12, 11, 13, and 19. Already 5 years where he's better. Then he was hurt where he had 1.5.
Say that again.
He was hurt. Then he had 1.5. But then after that, he came back 14, 10, 10.5, 13.5, 14, and 10. The man literally had 2 separate stretches, which were both longer peaks than J.J. Watt. And that's not all. You look at Reggie White, you look at Kevin Green, and even sacks, I believe, started getting counted in 1982. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Around that time, yes.
Yep. And there are people where if you go back, there are people who went back and looked at all the game film, all the statistics, and there's even people like greats that before sacks were invented, basically, like, I don't know, Deacon Jones, for example. Could we forget Alan Page? I mean, and even people like Jack Youngblood? Well, I'm sorry, these old heads, you got to respect them. And there's even players that are active now that have more sacks. Like, I mean, Justin Houston's literally just 1 half sack away from tying J.J. Watt. Chandler Jones has more. Cameron Jordan has more. And Von Miller has more. So, I mean, like I said, I know I'm just looking at sacks, but most of them have more tackles, where he's not even top 250 in tackles. But the thing is, it's the persona, it's the media attention that really builds him up.
No.
And look, and he was famous, and I'll admit, but when it comes to the best top 5, I have my doubts.
No.
What do you mean no? I literally just gave you the numbers.
Adam, go. I need to hear both of y'all before I continue.
All right. So, given the statistics that I just gave, it's really you really can't rest your case on JJ Watt being a top 5 lineman based on his career statistics and where he ranks in relation to all the other greats. What you can do is base it off his time. JJ Watt was the greatest not only defensive lineman, but defensive player of his time. So from 2012 to 2015, he had 3 out of 4 years. He had 17 and a half sacks or more. And in that span, 3 times he won Defensive Player of the Year. One of those, he was the runner-up of league MVP. May I remind you that only 2 other players have ever won league MVP on the defensive side of the ball. Both of them were on the defensive line. Both of them are all-time greats with the likes of Alan Page and Lawrence Taylor. And so, like, in that sense, when he was on the field and healthy, there's no one better than him, at least during his time on the defensive line. No one better. I mean, he was so much of a difference maker. He very nearly won league MVP in 2014 over Aaron Rodgers. But the case, the problem that I have with that case and why I'm very iffy on it is because the best ability is availability. And he may have been a great difference maker, and this is the problem I had with Rob Gronkowski as well, as much as I loved him, is that you may have been great when you were on the field, but it's got to be sustainable. And these 2 players played their asses off. And ultimately, it contributed to their downfall. I mean, after that stretch of all of these from after 2015, he only had 2 seasons where he played the full 16 games. And so you had a quarter of all of his seasons ever played. So that's 4 seasons where he failed to play more than half of a season. That's 8 games. One of them he played only 3 games. Another 5. Another was 7, 8. I mean, that's just not good. And it's hard. Like, if you look at it in that small sample size where he was playing, he was incredible. I mean, you talk about a difference maker on that side of the ball. He's that. But it's just like I'm very iffy on it because you've got to be able to stay on the field at the same time. And that's how I rest my case. I'd say he's I'd say he's top 5, but barely top 5. He's right.
Okay,
He's
so
a
Adam
right.
agrees with me on this that he's top 5.
I've been very back and forth because I've been researching, I've been figuring out where everybody is. But there's still several players who are better than JJ Watt on the defensive line.
My argument is I never said he was the best. I never said he was second best. I said he's top 5. And for us to poo-poo it as if I'm speaking nonsense or is it not debatable is crazy in my eyes. I will say this again. In his peak, those 3 to 4 years, there was nobody comparable to JJ Watt outside of maybe Aaron Donald at his peak. Anybody else in history falls short in some capacity. The only person I believe is close to that is Lawrence Taylor. Anybody else falls short.
So you have a number 2 all time.
No, I have him top 5 because, again, I do doc notes for longevity and among other things, but I still think he's top 5
You
for
literally just said
impact.
no one else other than like Lawrence Taylor's comparable.
Yeah, that's why I believe he's top 5. But again, I don't have the stats don't really give him the longevity. He has over 100
Because he didn't
sacks.
have the longevity.
Yeah, because he always got injured. Well, he got injured at the most inopportune times.
Yeah, well, so did Gronk. I mean, look, and I'm a Pats fan. I love Gronk, but I gotta admit that really does hurt him.
As far as what, I don't understand the argument against Gronk. You guys are Patriots fans. You guys should be telling me he's number 1 because of what he's done.
Him or Gonzalez, both have strong cases, but
One's
Gronk's
a 4-time Super
was
Bowl
longer.
champion.
Gronk literally lit the league on fire and was good until like 2017. So it's like 2010 to 2017. That's 7 years, or 8, depending on how the math works. But
I mean,
Watt's
this is an
time
this is
was
an NFL
admittedly shorter.
This is an NFL podcast, so I try to be as unbiased as possible, and I just think Gronkowski. The reason it's debatable whether or not he's the greatest tight end of all time. Well, number 1, there's not very many real great tight ends. Number 2, his career longevity sucked. I mean, that guy could not stay on the field at his absolute best. And it really got annoying at times. Like 2013, I thought we were going to win the Super Bowl. I really did. 2016, they almost fumbled the bag because he got hurt for the rest of the year. Luckily, they had a backup tight end that year who was at least a portion of what he could do in Bennett, Martellus Bennett. But like, I mean, it became a problem for the Patriots. It was from 2010 to up all the way up. Like, I mean, up until 2013, he was the focal point of that offense, and it was becoming a liability. And the reason why those Patriots teams always lost in the playoffs because they always lost. They didn't have him, or he wasn't completely healthy come playoff time, and it screwed him over. I mean, it was a liability at times.
I can't hold it against Gronk for being dominant and getting injured because he was so dominant. That's why defenses played him like the way they played him, because he was so dominant and there was no other way to deal with him. I can't hold that against him for being dominant. I can't hold the injuries that he sustained on the field as his fault because he was too damn dominant. I can't hold that against JJ because he just, at the most inopportune times, his injuries were different. I can't hold that against JJ that his leg broke at one time, or his biceps got torn off, or that he had an injured fist or an injured hand at one point in time. That's just how dominant they were.
You can't hold it against him, but you can at least use that as a reason to understand why why it's debatable that he's top 5, because like that just contributes to to the way he played the game. He never went down. He played every snap at 150%, and you can respect that, but you're also going to get hurt doing it.
Yeah.
And there has to be some sort of happy medium there, especially in the game of football. It's really hard to go 150% on every single snap. JJ Watt and Rob Gronkowski did just that, and I respect him for it. But it also contributed as to why their careers were so short-lived. They got hurt. It happens.
I don't know if it's short. if it's short, considering how long they actually played. But again,
I'll
I
rephrase.
understand what you're saying. But
I'll
again,
rephrase.
at their peak, there's no one better than those two at their peaks.
I'll rephrase why their primes were short. It's just that's just part of why it happened. And you can't really hold it against them because respect to them for that. I mean, it's hard, like for all the stuff that we do, it's hard for us to be 100% all the time. They did that and then some for every single play. I mean, that's really hard to do, but JJ Watt did it, but it also screwed him over at the end of the day. And the second half of his career was not the same as the first half. The only time since that stretch where he was really his true self was in 2018. It was his third to last year in Houston. He was an All-Pro. It is also worth noting he's a 5-time All-Pro, and 4 of those were during that stretch where he was completely dominant. But 2018, 16 sacks, 18 tackles for loss. He was the runner-up for Comeback Player of the Year. So this guy, I mean, it's just he wasn't the same during the second half of his career. And I'm talking from 2016 until 2022. So that's 7 years where he just wasn't the same. That's more than half of his career. I mean, that just can't be overlooked, especially with the fact that he's outside the top, and I don't know how far outside the top 250 he is in tackles and combined tackles, because Pro Football Reference can't even track where he is. He's just that far back. And in sacks, he's 38th all time, which it's still pretty good that he got racked up 11.5 sacks, because if you're getting injured for more than half of your career and you're still able to rack up that much, that's pretty damn good.
You mean 111?
111. Yeah. What did I say?
11.
Oh, I meant 111 and a half. That's also a mouthful to say. Forced fumbles, 27, 32nd all time, tied with like 3 other guys for that spot. Tackles for loss, again, like that's a great stat. It's good that that's an important stat to tell whether or not you're elite. And the fact that you went second all time, problem is that only became a stat fairly recently. So that's the issue there. So that's 20. It's about 30 years it's been around. But I just can't. It's hard for me to put it. It's really hard for me to put him top 5, and I think I barely have him there. I'd have to take some more time to think about it. But we do want to move on. And again, as one player leaves the league, another head coach has been forced out of his team, less than a season through, which is Nathaniel Hackett from the Denver Broncos. We're going to talk about the firing, how it finally happened. That's next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. So the Denver Broncos, after an abysmal 4-11 start to the season, have fired their head coach Nathaniel Hackett. So 15 games in, 4-11 for a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in Russell Wilson. You had 2 wide receivers who have been, I mean, they haven't made a Pro Bowl yet, but Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. I mean, just look at the team all around them. And they finished with 4 wins. Well, not finished. They could win a couple more because there's 2 more games left. But guys, not only that, but they also fired their offensive line coach and their special teams coach, and their GM George Patton had to come on a press conference, said that we believe we can fix Russell Wilson. So, is it the coaching? What is it, guys?
CJ?
Oh, thank you. So, if you will recall, earlier in the year, we did an episode, I believe it was called Fat and Happy, where, we were talking about Russell Wilson's struggles. And I mean, I'm seeing Russ play, or Russ cook, as they like to say, and the drive just isn't there. He got the bag over the offseason, and since then, it looks like he's just been complacent. His reads aren't as sharp. He's playing sloppily. And as bad as that is, he's still a very good quarterback. But then there's Nathaniel Hackett, where it's becoming abundantly, because Packers offensive coordinator, it's becoming abundantly clear that he is horrifically unqualified to be a head coach. And he was buoyed by Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. And you knew it was bad when week 1, we figured out the hard way that he could not, in fact, manage a game clock. Now, I'm sorry. I don't care where you stand on him. That's just horrible. And when you think about it, this ineptitude permeated itself throughout the entire offense, to the point where, like he said, the offensive line coach has been fired, I believe. And on top of that, you had to bring in a special assistant to literally help Nathaniel Hackett manage the game clock, and this guy's now the head coach. And I want to say the future is going to get better, but firing Nathaniel Hackett will only do so much. You got to convince Russell Wilson that you're in it to win a Super Bowl. It's time to care. Look past the money,
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can all agree he is getting a little bit complacent. And unless their future is on Russell Wilson, and unless Russell Wilson shapes up, it's not going to be very pretty for them. I mean, they don't even have a first-round pick this year. And soon they're going to enter cap hell. And, well, like I said, long story short, this all hinges on Russell Wilson. I think he can turn it around, but will he? That's a different story.
Broncos country, let's hide. Because goodness gracious, this is just the worst thing right now for the Denver Broncos. First things first, I guess I'm sorry for Nathaniel Hackett for getting fired. Congratulations to the Denver Broncos for firing Nathaniel Hackett.
Congratulations.
This guy couldn't manage a cookout, let alone a game clock. Oh, my God. And then there's Russell Wilson. I understand that he is a problem, but hopefully they actually get a head coach that understands what they have with the team surrounding him, and they can build the offense to support Russell Wilson's needs. Russell, stop throwing terrible, horrendous interceptions and actually start caring about winning these games. Actually make good quality reads. Check the ball down instead of trying to throw it deep when you know the guy is double covered. Don't try to make the incredible Herculean play you always do. It's not always there. Just check it down every once in a while. That'll be nice. And actually be the franchise quarterback we traded for to begin with. Oh, man. The defense, funny enough, I know we looked at that 51 beating that the Rams gave them, but overall, I think they just didn't want to be there, to be honest, because they were arguably one of the best defenses in the league. They were averaging like 18 to 19 points a game. They were keeping their team in these games. The problem is the offense kept on letting them down when they needed them the most. So unfortunately for them, the defense is fine, but they have an incompetent offense to support them. And I want to say it'll get better, but unfortunately, they don't even have a first round pick. That's gone off to Seattle for this franchise guy. So I guess all this Denver Broncos fans looking forward to a first round pick, all you have to do is look at Russell Wilson's Denver Bronco highlights to see if it was worth it. Oh man, it's an unfortunate situation, but there's still a lot of progress. There's still weapons surrounding Russell Wilson. They still have Jerry Jeudy. They still have KJ Hamler. They still have Cortland Sutton, and they still have Tim Patrick, who hopefully comes back healthy. And the only thing I'm worried about is the run game because they don't really have that guy now that Javonte Williams is injured. But hopefully he'll come back 100%. And then after that, it's just manage the clock properly. They would have actually a few more wins under their belt if they just managed the clock properly. So maybe a change at head coaching spot may actually do wonders for them. And also the guy that's the head coach, former Ravens special team coach. I appreciate that. Super Bowl champion, knows what it takes to win. So, pointless plug right there. But overall, I don't think it's as bleak as everybody says, but it's not exactly the happiest time to be a Broncos fan either.
All right. So you have to look at the coaching first. So they're doing the right thing by firing the head coach. And I'm glad that they did it. Just they probably should have done it earlier. When you look at the coaching, I mean, like Tuck alluded to, their clock management was really bad. Their play calling was god awful. I remember one game they played the Chargers. It was either on Thursday night or Monday night football. It was Monday
Thursday.
night. I know
Thursday.
It was Monday. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure it was Monday Night Football. They faced the Chargers or
it
I
was
believe
the Chargers
yeah.
Damn. I believe it was the Broncos and Colts Thursday night. I think that was it. Because I remember Richard Sherman was on Thursday night at that time. I think that was the thing.
You sure?
And they were talking. Richard Sherman was on like the post-game coverage of that game, and he was ridiculing Russell Wilson after the game.
That's not what I was alluding to. What I was trying to say was that this team. So what they did, like in a game where the Chargers and Broncos were going back and forth, not even back and forth, like both of them struggled to score in their own rights.
My fault.
And they were like, it was a close game, a game script where you should be throwing the ball all over the field with your Pro Bowl quarterback, and in that offense with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and they didn't do that. They ran the excuse me. They ran the ball with the likes of Latavius Murray because Javonte Williams was hurt. They ran the ball like 17 times with him. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's not what you should be doing. You should be throwing the ball, especially when you paid this quarterback so much money. Why the conservative play? Wilson was able to throw the ball all over the field to Metcalf and Lockett throughout earlier past seasons with the Seahawks. So why is that a problem now? That was an issue that I had. Also, the offensive line play. I understand it's not the best offensive line in the world, but it should be better than to perform to a point where they're allowing Russell Wilson to be sacked the most out of any quarterback this season. He has now taken that number one spot over Justin Fields, over Joe Burrow, over everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That is really bad. Like, how do you allow that quarterback, especially someone as mobile as him, to get sacked so much? That is a big problem. That's an issue. So they fired their offensive line coach as well. So that you have to look at that first, especially since you paid this quarterback so much money, Russell Wilson. He has gone from being a perennial 30-plus touchdown quarterback to maybe he may not even break 20 this year. Furthermore, he's thrown 10 interceptions this year? 9, 10? It's not good. Like, how do you have a 14 to 10 touchdown to interception ratio? That's pretty bad. So you look at that first, the play calling. But if they improve that and Russell Wilson is still struggling, then you might have a real attitude problem with this quarterback who, it turns out from reports coming out of Seattle, that had a fire lit under him his entire career when we didn't even know it. He thought he was going to be traded when you would think he would have that job security. He didn't, it turns out. So it looks like it looks like there is also a possibility that maybe it's not not only the head coaching, but that it's also that Wilson has an attitude problem and that he's not really that motivated unless someone else is motivating him. And if you are a quarterback, you should be a leader on that team. So you look at the head coaching first, and this Broncos team should be looked at under a magnifying glass next year. And if it turns out that there's still an issue, you're going to have some problems for years to come, especially with the contract that you just gave Russell Wilson. That's kind of my take on this. But we do need to move on and get to a bit of a, let's say a three, what is a three horse race? What the hell do you call it?
Three horse race.
That's not even a good. That doesn't even roll off the tongue well. But it's a cool phrase to use, and it's the right phrase to use for what has become of the race for the first seed available. The first seed in the AFC between the Bills, Chiefs, and Bengals. Who's going to get it in the next couple of weeks? We'll talk about that next. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. It's caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. So the Bills have clinched the AFC East for a third straight season. The second team in the AFC to do it. It was the Chiefs in the week prior in week 15. Before that. But they did it after a 35-13 rout of the Chicago Bears. And so you have three teams here who are in the lead. And I'm trying to pull up the playoff picture here. Who are three teams in the lead for in contention at least to get the number 1 seed, the first round bye. So the Bills are 12-3. The Chiefs are right behind them, also at 12-3, just by decision, head-to-head matchup. And the Cincinnati Bengals hot on their heels at 11-4. And the Bills have a matchup with the AFC North leading Bengals, who has the edge of who has the edge of the AFC division leaders in the playoffs here?
Well, I believe the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs to lose, or it's the Bills to lose. I believe the Bills and the Bengals is going to be tough either or, and I believe the Chiefs have the path of least resistance. So I believe either them or the Bills will end up as the first seed. I believe the Bills might struggle against the Bengals, so that might take them out. And I believe the Bengals won't finish as the number 1 seed because they still have a problem on their hands. Stop counting out my Ravens. We still gonna win that North. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget the Ravens are still got a chance to win the AFC North.
We're talking about the 1 seed though.
Yeah, but I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to get it. I just think that the Bills are either going to beat them or the Chiefs are just going to are going to win out. I don't see the Bills or the Chiefs losing out on that. So it's just a matter of who do you believe will most likely get it? And I believe the Chiefs will. Damn sure won't be the Bengals. Not on my watch. Not today.
All right.
CJ?
As a Pats fan, as much as it pains me, I think Buffalo has the advantage. Now, as you know, they have the lead over the Chiefs, because of the tiebreaker. That's hugely important. And also, the Bengals are right on KC's heels. And you have to remember, the Bengals, I believe, also defeated the Chiefs. Now, I do agree with Justin that for the most part it is Buffalo's to lose. Because if you fall 1 game behind Kansas City, then that's then I don't think you're getting the 1 seed. And then when you look at the Bengals, that's an interesting team because if they win out, if they upset Buffalo, and if they defeat Baltimore, then I truly would have them probably as like the best team in the AFC. Because like I said, because then that would mean you have beaten A, your division, and B, KC, and you've beaten Buffalo. That's what could happen. But as for what I think will happen, I do think that Buffalo will maintain the 1 seed. They're going to tie with the Chiefs, and the Bengals will split. I can't tell you which one. I mean, they should beat the Ravens, but those division games, no matter how you slice it, are always pretty tough.
Psych.
Yeah, and we'll see. Long story short, it's Buffalo.
Yeah, it's definitely Buffalo who has the edge here between these 3 teams, but it is pretty evenly matched. I mean, the Patrick Mahomes, the way he's been able to really overshadow some of their weakness in the pass catching corps, and the Cincinnati Bengals, they definitely have the best supporting cast for their quarterback out of all 3 of these teams, with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst. Even at the running back position, they have Joe Mixon, who's undoubtedly the best running back out of these 3 teams. The reason I would have the Bengals towards the bottom of these 3 is the offensive line. Their offensive line have been playing well, and because of it, they've won 6 straight games. What's the catch here? The reason for that is because they've been able to keep Joe Burrow on his feet. And now that they lost their starting right tackle, prized free agent acquisition, La'el Collins, I have my doubts whether or not they'll be able to do that anymore. And you guys saw what it was like earlier on in the season. They started 0-2. Joe Burrow was on pace to be sacked the most in a single season, like smash that record, which does not look good. And now they lost as soon as they started to figure things out, they lost their right tackle. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Now the Bills have had issues with their quarterback being sacked as well, but they've kind of figured it out in recent weeks. But I have to give the advantage to the Bills as long as they hold on to that number 1 seed. But the last time the Bills and Chiefs faced off, granted they did have Tyreek Hill, but the Chiefs still have their share of toys to play with. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have Mecole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, all speedsters who can at least combined in a group effort replace the production that Tyreek Hill brought to the table. And I haven't even mentioned Travis Kelce yet. So I give it to the Bills, but it's close between all three teams because I just think they all have that same play style. Their defenses are pretty much on the same level, especially since the Bills haven't been healthy on defense with Von Miller not being out for the year. I gotta give it to the Bills, but this is a close one, and this is going to be fun to watch for the rest of this season.
We know who it is. It's the Chiefs and the Bills, and then the Bengals. The Bengals right here. And then somewhere in between, more importantly, it's the Ravens. I mean,
I'm sure.
I know it hurts that everybody doesn't want to say it. It's fine. But we're better than the Bengals. And we'll show it come playoff time. And we'll show it come week 18 when we take the division.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say that Rashad Bateman, who's I believe on IR now, right?
He's out for the season.
He's out for the season.
Yes.
That was their top wide receiver. Now he's gone. So you got Duvernay and Mark Andrews.
Gone. Duvernay's gone too.
Oh, there you go.
So it's just Mark Andrews and the rest right now.
Mark Andrews, and then your backup, Isaiah Likely.
Yes, Isaiah Likely, and then we have Prochet and Demarcus Robinson, who's actually not playing bad. And you got Sammy Watkins.
So it sounds like you answered your own question there. Your top wide receiver is Sammy Watkins, who hasn't played at a high level to be a wide receiver one since 2014.
No. Demarcus Robinson is our number one. Sammy's our number two. I want to say
that's a lot better. That's a lot better.
It's not a lot better, but Demarcus Robinson has been playing better. And then there's Deshaun Jackson, who's still at year 15, can still burn a lot of cornerbacks. I'm not saying it's good, but it's something we can work with. And we still have a stellar defense. So I can work with this, even though my play calling is abysmal.
All right. Well, I think I'm still going to give the edge to the Bengals here.
Watch week 18 when they lose. Watch week 18 when they lose.
Week 18 they're going to lose?
Yes.
All right. We'll have to just wait and see.
Justin, mark my words. If Cincinnati wins, you're not going to hear the end of it from me.
Yeah, and we're mentioning it on the show. I hope you know that.
I expect phone calls from both of you.
Phone calls and a shout out on our podcast.
Okay.
All right. We got to move on. And we have our Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix, our final week of waiver wire pickups. We'll probably do another one next week for those of you who do your championship on the final week of the regular season. That's a risky one, though. But, I mean, if you guys do it, then we will help you out. And we have your championship weekend or conference championship weekend waiver wire pickups. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. We have reached our Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix portion of the show, which is waiver wire pickups. So we are going into our week 17, if you can believe it. And a lot of you guys, if you're still listening to this portion, you're in the championship. If not, you could have your championship in the last week. That is a risky one. That is very risky because do you know how many teams in that league bench their starters? Like they'll do it like a quarter into the game because they already have their seed locked up and they're playing for the postseason. That's a tough one. I offer respect to those of you who do that, but we'll be with you guys every step of the way. So waiver wire pickups for week 17, starting with running backs. Cam Akers and Tyler Algier. For wide receiver, DJ Chark and Jahan Dotson. Tight end, we have Tyler Higbee and Evan Engram. Quarterback streamers, we have Mike White at Seattle and Brock Purdy at Las Vegas. For defense streamers, we have Jaguars at Houston and Giants versus Indianapolis. Well, there you have it for Week 17 waiver wire pickups. And next, we have our Fumblerooski fan box. And we are going to talk about who you guys picked for your league MVP. That's one you will not want to miss. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power Radiate and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. So we have reached the Fumblerooski fan box. So we post a question filter on our Instagram every Monday, and you can respond with hot takes, questions, and more. And we will discuss it and give you a shout out on our podcast. Respond to next week's fan box question to be featured on our show. So the question of the week was, who's your pick for league MVP this year? All right. So our first response, and we'll go through who answered for which player. So among those who picked Patrick Mahomes are Grayson Mortimer, Brogdon Hill, Derek Houle, and then Chris Kostic, Isaac Zonana, Jack Breel, Charlie Tim, and Jad Noman. So that is a good pick. And CJ and I have talked about this one. I'm not sure what Tuck's pick is. But I think that should be a slam dunk. That should be your league MVP.
Yeah, there's really no two ways around it at this point.
Are you
He's
sure
the leader
about-
he's the leader in both touchdown passes and passing yards. And he's doing it with his top wide receiver for the season being Juju Smith-Schuster.
How many passing touchdowns does he have?
37.
All right,
He's going to wind up with that's going to be the second most in his career, only to that 50 burger he put out there in his first season starting, putting the league on notice.
Oh, yeah.
He's on pace, according to ESPN, for 42 on the season,
Hey,
which is pretty impressive.
I love it.
Not bad, not too shabby.
And he's also on pace for 5,200 yards, which is
Yeah, that's pretty good.
like incredible. But there are other candidates, and we're going to go to Jalen Hurts. So among people who voted Jalen Hurts, Diego Huertas, Andrew Michalak. Is it Michalak or Michalak?
Michalak.
Yeah, because you know him better. So Andrew Michalak, Josh Houle, and scrolling through. So that's it. 3 for Jalen Hurts, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm missing somebody.
Mhm.
No, that's it. One kid said Eli Turner said, I would pick Hurts, but the Eagles did just fine with Minshew, so I'll go Josh Allen, which leads to Josh Allen, who he's our only Josh Allen vote, actually. So
Josh Allen doesn't deserve that.
What's that?
Josh Allen doesn't deserve MVP over Mahomes or Hurts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just glad we got a voter of a different player than Mahomes or Hurts, because I'm pretty sure those two made up 10 of our votes. and we had 17 responses. So, I mean, you can make a case for Allen, and he'd have to play a lot. He'd have to play out of his mind in these next 2 games. But he does have he did get 30 or more touchdowns for his 3rd straight season, and he's on pace to get over 4,500 yards yet again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was one of the leaders in MVP like halfway through the season, but then he went through that stretch. It was a 3-game stretch halfway through the year where he threw 6 picks and he turned the ball over 7 total times. That is what killed his MVP case. But he's still deserving of being in that general area, right? He still deserves to be there.
He's still elite, but not MVP.
Yeah. All right. So we got 2 Joe Burrow votes, and it was Ian Mulhern and Stephen Parker and Chris Kostic, because he kind of said 2. He mentioned 2 players. He said Chris said either Patty or Burrow, but the media loves Patty way more, with 3 Ys in the way. Yeah, I mean, between those 2, between Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, Mahomes is going to have the edge because he's more popular. He's already taken the league by storm years ago, and statistically he's been better. More touchdown passes, more passing yards, and he's done it with nothing. Joe Burrow actually has a lot there. Now, Joe Burrow, his time might come in a few years, but it probably won't be this year. But Ian Mulhern, Stephen Parker, and Chris Kostic said Joe Burrow.
Oh, too bad, so sad. Not this year.
Yeah.
Not on my watch. Not this year.
Looking at other votes, we got one for, this was an interesting one, Justin Jefferson. Tyler Tucker said Justin Jefferson.
Oh, there might be an argument.
One thing that no one is talking about is the fact that this guy has 1,756 yards this season, which mathematically over these last 2 games, granted if they don't sit Jefferson for the last game of the season, he does have a shot at that all-time record. What is it, like?
1964.
Yeah, he's right.
1864. No, it's not
1964.
Exactly. He's right there. He's like right there.
He's on pace for it.
He's on pace for it, and no one's talking about it. Everyone was talking about it with Mr. Cooper Kupp last season, and he didn't make it. But no one's talking about it this year. That's interesting. We got a couple other ones, and these were mostly jokes. Bennett Graff, who's my next door neighbor, he said George Costanza from the show Seinfeld.
Oh my goodness.
That's our league MVP. And then Tyson Tate said, got to go Eminem right now.
Tyson, we forgive you.
He might be the MVP of Detroit, but not the MVP of the league.
Well, Detroit football is turning around, so maybe he'll be part of that. He better be the halftime performer for whenever they go to the Super Bowl.
They could actually still make the playoffs.
Yeah, they could, but their chances took a big hit when they lost to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
So that didn't look good. Yeah. So do you guys have any other thoughts before we end the show tonight?
Nope.
No, I'm good. I'm good for right now.
All right. Among other topics that we were going to have on this show, we were going to talk about how the Jaguars took over first place, in the AFC South. And the only reason we cut it out is we can probably talk about it in the next couple of shows, because no matter what happens in week 17, week 18 is what is going between the Titans and the Jaguars is what is going to decide who wins that AFC South game. And I'm thinking about that Simpsons meme where you have the 2 monkeys who are fighting and everyone's placing wagers.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think it's going to be kind of fun. It's like neither team's going to win the Super Bowl, but like there's something at stake there. It's kind of cool. I don't
Pride.
know, like I can't wait for that week 18 game between those two. Like I'm gonna like who's gonna place bets on who's going to win. Also, the Dolphins have lost 4 straight games. After, I mean, like look, if you look at it, so they're 8-7 right now. They were once 8-3 and in contention for the first seed in the AFC. They were looking like one of the best teams in the like not only in the AFC but possibly the league. And now it doesn't even look close to that. And it's really sad. Some injuries killed him, but also I don't know what's going on with Tua. He is in concussion protocol yet again, but the fact that he threw 3 picks in the second half really does, that should raise some eyebrows right there. But we didn't talk about those two because we could talk about that another time, and we do need to cut how long our show is, as it is over an hour as it is. But anyways, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.